Welcome to the Pulsating Biology's crash course video for the chapter of O levels, that is the gaseous exchange or respiratory system in the human beings. When you talk about the gaseous exchange, we've already covered this entire chapter, and in this video, we're going to overlook the entire chapter and learn about small and the entire basics about it. Alright, let's begin the chapter by understanding that what is the concept of gaseous exchange. When you talk about the gaseous exchange, it's the interchange of two important gases. Number one is the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. And the exchange between what two? The exchange between basically an organism and the environment. So, when you say the gaseous exchange is the exchange of gases between an organism and the environment, that is known as the respiratory system in a human being. The gases exchange differ in the kind of organism that is present. For example, when you talk about the unicellular organism uni means one and cellular means one cell. So those organisms that are unicellular, that means that consist of only one kind of cell, we say that they have a very large surface area to volume ratio, which is so. What happens because of that? What happens is that they does not require any special gaseous exchange system or any special organs for the efficient gaseous exchange. Instead, they use this mechanism that is known as the diffusion. Now, what is the diffusion? Diffusion is nothing but one of the transport mechanism that is also used in the gaseous exchange, which means the movement of gaseous molecules from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration down a concentration gradient, which means the molecules are going to move from the region where the molecule number is high to the region where the molecule number is lower, down the concentration gradient. So in unicellular organisms, gaseous exchange takes place through diffusion. However, when you talk about the larger animals, that means the mammals, and which the amphibians and the reptiles are included, or even the human beings are included, we say there's a proper mechanism of the gaseous exchange, as they have a very smaller surface area to volume ratio. And they also does not have a very thick protection in order to prevent the water loss and in order to consume a very gaseous quantity in themselves. So what happens within those? Within those organisms, basically a special structure is present, which we are going to discuss in detail, that is known as the alveoli. Alveoli are the air sacs. These air sacs are very important to basically gas exchange phenomena. What are the organs that are included in the gaseous exchange? They are the lungs, the nasal passage, the pharynx, larynx, trachea, and the bronchiole. And all of them are basically protected by the intercostal muscles. For further understanding, we will look at this diagram. In this diagram, this is the entire gaseous exchange organs that are present in the respiratory system of a human being. This is the internal structure of a human being, where majorly you need to identify the lungs. It consists of two kinds of the lungs. It is beneath the lungs we have a diaphragm, which is a muscular layer that basically contracts and relaxes and allows the gaseous exchange to be taken place. Here the small air sacs are known as the alveoli. When you talk about the gaseous exchange in human being, regardless of these very important factors and the organs, you need to understand the gaseous exchange takes place and starts from the nasal passage. The air enters into the body through the two nasal passages and the two nostrils. This is known as the nasal passage. This nasal passage basically includes the hair particles. What is the purpose of these hair particles? Those hair particles basically traps all the dust that is most likely to enter into the body. It also captures all the foreign particles, including bacteria in the air or all the organisms that are harmful for the body and are trapped. So what happens? What does it basically perform? It performs a line of defense in order to protect the body from all sorts of the microorganisms. When you talk once the air enters from the external two nostrils, we said the air reaches from the nose to the pharynx and the larynx. This region is termed as the pharynx, and the voice box here is termed as the larynx. Once the air has passed through pharynx and the larynx, it enters into the trachea. Trachea is similar to the esophagus, as esophagus is a food pipe. Trachea is termed as the windpipe. The air now moves from the trachea into the bronchioles. It bifurcates, and these bifurcation tubes are known as the bronchioles. These bronchioles are further separated and forms the bronchioles in much more manner. And then at the end of these structures are the alveoli, that are the air sacs that are present. At the outer surface of the lung, we say that there are these intercostal muscles that are also known as the cut ends of the rib. The internal intercostal muscle is the one that is present on the inner side. We say this is the internal costal muscle. And the one that is present on the outside, we say this is the external intercostal muscle. What is the function of these muscles? We are going to discuss about them in a much more detail, but for now you need to know that internal intercostal muscle and the external intercostal muscle plays a very important role in contracting and relaxing, that allows the oxygen to basically be able to enter into the lungs, and carbon dioxide to be moved in the opposite direction to the oxygen. Between these two lungs, right at this surface, we say that the heart is present, and heart is protected by its own surfaces. This is the entire view that you need to learn about the nasal passage and the entire respiratory system about the human beings. This is the entire nasal passage that are involved. When you talk about the trachea in a much more detail, we say that the trachea have two kinds of the cell, the gland cell and the ciliated cell. That also we are going to discuss in the further videos. This is the entire what you need to learn about the respiratory system in a human beings and all the organs that are involved in the gaseous exchange. Now, let's discuss 1 to 2 factors due to which these organs are important in the nasal passage. We say when you talk about the trachea, as I already told you earlier, trachea is termed as the windpipe. This windpipe basically transports the air from the pharynx into the bronchioles and bifurcates into the two lungs. When you talk about the trachea consists two kinds of these cells, the gland cells and the epithelial cell. These gland cell and the epithelial cell are very important, as the gland cell secretes mucus that traps the dust particles. So what is the purpose of gland cell? It secretes the mucus. When you talk about the ciliated cell, these cells have hair-like structures that are known as the cilia. They are also known as the epithelial cell, and they are also known as the ciliated cell. They consist of the cilia. These cilia are the hair-like structures that are basically important for trapping all kinds of the dust particles, and basically cilia sweep the dust trap mucus upon the trachea. These are the two very important cells that are present into the trachea. When you talk about the next organ or the next structure along with the trachea, we say that the bronchi and the bronchioles that gives rise to the alveoli that are the air sacs. In the entire nasal passage, we say that the hair that are present plays a very important role, as they have three major functions. That is, they trap the dust particles, they moisturize the air that is coming into the body, and also protects the body from all the harmful microbes. After learning about all the organs that are involved in the human respiratory system, the question arises that how are lungs adapted for efficient gas exchange? And the answer for this is the one organ or the one structure that is known as the alveoli. We've talked about the alveoli in the previous slides also, but the alveoli is basically the air sacs that plays a very important role and that are very important for the gaseous exchange. There are now numerous amount of alveoli that are present in the lungs. For further information, have a look at this picture. This is the inner view of the alveoli, and we are going to learn how the air enters and leaves the alveoli. This is the alveolar cavity. That inner part of the alveoli is known as the alveolar cavity, and we say that there are numerous amount of alveoli that are present, and they provide a large surface area to volume ratio, due to which the gaseous exchange is sufficiently possible to be taken place. When you talk about the wall of the alveoli, we say it's almost 1 cell thick. The wall of the alveoli, is the wall of alveoli. This wall of alveoli protects the alveoli from any sort of the injury, and this is the alveolar wall, which is almost 1 cell thick, we say. 1 cell thick. Next, we say that the alveoli is richly supplied by the blood capillaries. The blood capillaries, or the section of alveolus, when you talk about the section of alveolus, this is the blood capillaries that are running around the alveoli, and there are multiple amount of blood capillaries. We say that the alveoli receive the oxygenated blood mainly, and also the deoxygenated blood, since the blood capillaries that are running into the alveoli are very in a large quantity, and there is a continuous blood flow that is taking place in the alveoli. When we talk about the oxygen and the carbon dioxide concentration gradient between the alveolar air and the blood, that is maintained by the two major factors. One is the continuous flow of the blood through the blood capillaries, and the movement of air in and out of the alveoli. This is the movement of air in and out of the alveoli, from the blood capillaries to the alveolar cavity. This is the two major functions due to which we say that the gaseous exchange in the alveoli plays a very important role. Next, we say that along with the exchange of gases, with when you talk about the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, diffusion takes place. And here we say that the exchangement of oxygen and the carbon dioxide takes place with a process that is known as the diffusion. The oxygen is diffused into the alveolar cavity and carbon dioxide is diffused into the blood capillaries. Now, let's talk about the breathing mechanism. When you talk about the breathing mechanism, we need to understand that the breathing term means the intake and the excreting out of the gaseous molecules, that is, intake of the oxygen and releasing of the carbon dioxide. We say that this is the part of the gaseous exchange process. It refers to the muscular contraction and movement of the rib, which results in the air moving in and out. When you talk about the ribs and the intercostal muscle, which we have discussed in the previous slide, we talk about it in such a manner that all of those muscles are involved in the two major functions. One is the contraction and the number two is the relaxation. These are the two major functions that take place. Once you have a look at this diagram once again, we talk about it that these are the intercostal muscle that are involved. These are the intercostal muscle, and the ribs that are coming in such a manner from the sternum, that is the backbone, are basically protected by the that basically protects the heart. We say that these are termed as the ribs, and the movement of ribs, these sternum, the intercostal, internal intercostal, the external intercostal, and the diaphragm, all of these are involved in the breathing mechanism of a human being. Now you'll be able to understand in a much more better way that there are two kinds of the processes that are taking place. One is the inspiration, one is the expiration. Inspiration means taking in of the air. Whenever a human being inspire inside the body, we say that inspiration takes place. Whenever it secretes out the inspiration, that is the inspired air, we say that expiration takes place. Most the human beings inspire inside oxygen and expire outside carbon dioxide. These are the two major processes. Let's talk about what is the difference and how does the breathing mechanisms and the organs work when the inspiration takes place, and how does it work when the expiration takes place. Let's first talk about the inspiration. Inspiration is taking in all the oxygen, as we have already learned. Now let's talk about how the mechanism occurs. Firstly, the diaphragm. Diaphragm is present beneath the lungs. We have already talked that it is a muscular organ that basically contracts and relaxes whenever an organism inspires in the air. It contracts and basically flattens. As we have already seen in this diagram, that normally the diaphragm is in a dome shape. But whenever a person inspires, that is taking in the oxygen, the diaphragm basically flattens below the lungs. This is how the diaphragm looks like whenever we inspire. Next, we are going to talk about the external intercostal muscle and the internal intercostal muscle. So, these are the external and the internal intercostal muscle. The outer one is known as the external, while the inner one is known as the internal. What happens? The external intercostal muscle contracts and the internal intercostal muscle relaxes. In such a manner, the movement of lungs takes place and the inspiration takes place. Thirdly, we have the ribs. Ribs are the side corners that basically protects the heart and the lungs. Those moves upward and the outward. And then the volume. Whenever you inspire something, the volume increases. So obviously, we say that the thoracic cavity increases whenever there is the intake of the oxygen. Next, the atmospheric pressure. The atmospheric pressure related to the environmental pressure between the organism and the outside environment, we say that it decreases as the oxygen is taking place from the environment into the human body. These are the 4 to 5 pointers that you need to learn, that how the inspiration occurs in the breathing mechanism. Next, we have the expiration. Expiration is the releasing the air outside the body. In such a manner that the diaphragm relaxes and it arcs. As we have already told you, whenever in a normal human body, whenever the inspiration or expiration is not taking place, diaphragm is usually a dome shape. So in similar manner, whenever you expire, the diaphragm comes back to its position and it becomes a dome shape and basically relaxes. When you talk about the internal and the external intercostal muscle, it works vice versa into the inspiration, that it contracts and the other one relaxes. Thirdly, we have the ribs. The ribs move downward and the inward. The volume decreases as now you are releasing out the oxygen, out the carbon dioxide. We say that the volume decreases and the atmospheric pressure increases. Since you are releasing outside into the atmosphere, we say that the atmospheric pressure decreases. Now, lastly, we're going to talk about the components and the percentage that is inspired by the human body and expired by the human body. When you talk about oxygen and the carbon dioxide, that are the two major gaseous exchange molecule, we said that the oxygen in the environment is 21% and the expired air from the body, we say, is 16.4%, which is almost quarter to the amount of that. In such a manner, we need to understand that the residue air that is inside the body is almost quarter. When you talk about the carbon dioxide is less than the oxygen, it's almost 0.03%, and the expired amount of air is 4%. Then the rest of them are the minor gaseous molecules, that is the nitrogen, water vapor, temperature, and the dust particles, and from which the water vapor and the temperature are variable, depending upon the atmosphere the person is living in, the environment, and the human being itself, and the kind of the organism. When we talk about the dust particle, that is variable depending upon which environment the human being is inspiring and the expiring. But nitrogen is usually similar in the inspiration air and the expiration air, that is 78.0% and the 78.0%. This is the entire chapter that we have covered about the gaseous exchange. If you have any problem, you can ask in the comment section below.